Now, our second storyteller is going to take another stab on the educational side of things. As we all know, or I hope we all know, since we're here at Lincoln 200, Lincoln was self-taught. There were not really schools where he grew up. He was quoted as saying in his letters that beyond the basic 3 R's of reading, writing, and arithmetic, there really wasn't much for people that were into learning. So he read incessantly. He taught himself to become a lawyer just by reading the books over and over again. Now, while most of us went to school then, and in a different time, I think that we can all agree, though, that the most important lessons that we learn sometimes are the lessons that we teach and learn for ourselves. So now, coming up with our second story is a story that takes place in school, about how the lessons that the school teachers are trying to teach are not necessarily the most important lessons to be learned. So please put your hands together and welcome Juliet Wayne to the stage.
I've been fired from, I think the last time I counted, it was something like 80 jobs since I was 15. I've done everything from landscaping to waiting tables to cleaning houses and telemarketing. Any crappy job, I've done it. One of the weirdest jobs I've ever had was when I worked in a restaurant with this girl, and we became really good friends, but we both got fired. And she got a job teaching kindergarten at a Catholic school. And the other teacher, her grade partner, left because she was pregnant. And she was like, dude, you could totally get this job. And I was like, I don't really think that I could, but whatever, I'll go to the interview. So I go to the interview, and the head nun, she's like, nuns don't wear habits anymore, they wear like hoodies. And it was in North Philly, and I go there, and she says, the neighborhood's terrible, the kids are terrible, the pay is terrible. When can you start? And I was like, I can start tomorrow. I'll do just about anything for $8 an hour. So I go in, and I'm all excited because I'd been out of work for a little while, and I was like, oh, I'm making money again. And that's like kind of all I was thinking about. And my friend was like, well, I hope you're not nervous in front of the kids and all. And I was like, oh, no, I talk in front of people all the time. I'll be fine. I walked in there and froze. Like, I saw these 15 kids in front of me that were like, they all had this look on their face. And I started stuttering. I was stammering. And I was like, okay. And then I realized that I had the whole class to do whatever I wanted with. The door was closed, they were my kids, and I was like, okay, so let's tell stories. Everyone, let's take turns getting up, and we had a little marker phone. We didn't have a microphone, we had a little marker, and we're gonna tell stories. So the first kid goes up, and he's like, I went to the store, I got a toy, and I went home. And I was like, all right, does anyone have any questions or comments? No one has any questions or comments. Then the next kid goes, and they just start repeating the same thing that the last kid said. And I was like, all right. And I start getting all didactic about it. And I was like, all right, we're not allowed to talk about going to the store. Your story has to be about something else, anything else. And then the next kid goes up, and he's like, I went to the owl store, and I bought an owl, and I ate it. Does anyone have any questions? And I was like, I have a lot of questions. What did the owl taste like? Owls taste like chicken, apparently, to these kids. So, it being a Catholic school, I had to have them pray. And I wasn't raised religious. I'm not really religious. I don't have any problem with it. But, so I was like, okay, so we have to pray before we eat our lunch. But I don't really know any prayers. So I was like, I kind of know some things I learned in like AA, and I've done some yoga, so I was like, all right, and I was like, okay, everyone close your eyes, and they were like, we don't close our eyes when we do prayers, and I was like, now we do, because I didn't want them to see that I didn't know what I was talking about. So I was like, everyone close your eyes. And then they start like doing the sign of the cross, and I was like, oh yeah, sign of the cross. I don't really know what I'm doing. And then I was like, now pray to the animals and the forests and the sea, and I'm just like going on and on. I'm giving this whole speech, and I have my eyes closed because I'm terrified. I don't know what I'm going to do. And I open my eyes for a second, and I see that they are all actually praying to this vaguely pagan little prayer that I'm making up as I'm going along. So I'm like, wow, it's like they'll do anything I say. So I was like, oh, okay, you know what we're gonna do? And I brought in one of my old dollhouses, and I brought this big old dollhouse in, and I was like, you guys ever see that show on TV where they take a house and they fix it up and then they give it to someone and then the person starts crying? We're gonna do that. We're gonna fix this. It's Operation Dollhouse, you know? And they were like, all right, whatever. And I filled it with all these like action figures I got at the thrift store, and they just wanted to throw everything. They just wanted to take the toys out of the dollhouse and throw it. And I was like, you guys, come on, like, let's do this. Let's fix up the dollhouse. Let's make it really nice. And I was trying to get them to like cut little shingles and shutters and like fix it up. But kids don't want to do that. They want to get wild. So I was like, you guys, you don't understand. There's these kids and they're really sick and they want this dollhouse to look really good. But I had really selfish intentions myself because I wanted to look like the teacher that like got these kids to make this awesome dollhouse, and these sick kids would be really happy, but really it was all just about me looking good. And the kids didn't care. They were just throwing action figures everywhere, and I was like, okay, that's great. Well, like if you want to do that, just make sure that when Sister Ellen walks by, you're not doing that. Like, if maybe you could just, because if she walks by and sees it, she's gonna shut everything down. So let's just not do it when she's around. But they didn't care, because once chaos is set loose, they were just nuts. So it was Ash Wednesday, and I was really hungover, which was not good for teaching kids and going to the chapel in the morning. And also the dress I was wearing was see-through and I didn't realize it. So it was the perfect day for me to show up hungover in a see-through dress. So we get there and they're like, okay, here's what we got to do. All the teachers line up in the front of the church. And I was like, oh no. And they give everyone these little dishes of ash. And they're like, all the teachers are going to go around and give ashes to all your students. But first, we're going to put ashes on all the teachers' heads. So I walk up, and I swear that priest put a darker cross on my head than anyone else's. And then I walk back, and I get up to my kids, and I see all the other teachers are like, they're saying some kind of prayer when they're putting it on their kids' foreheads. But I didn't know what it was. So I was just telling them, like, we can wash it off when we get back to the classroom. They didn't want it. They were 4 years old. They don't know what's going on. So I went to lunch that day, and I went to the cafeteria at the hospital down the street and ordered a turkey sandwich. And I didn't know. I thought it was just Fridays. And everyone in the cafeteria starts flipping out, and they're like, you have ashes on your forehead, you're ordering a turkey sandwich. I was like, I didn't know. I thought it was only on Fridays, I don't know. And they're like, what are you taking ashes for if you don't know what ashes are for? And I was like, I just needed a job, you know? You understand, right? And they're like, wow, times are really changing around here. So I was like, fine, I'll just have the tuna. And then I got back to my classroom, which was chaos as usual. Everyone's throwing stuff and ripping stuff apart. And I'm like, well, that's fine. And the principal calls me into her office. And in my head, I'm like, all my kids know how to use scissors now. And we all know how to rip paper and make pictures out of it. And we're kind of learning how to tell stories. And that's all I got. And I sit down in her office, and she says the words that I hear all the time, which are, I don't think this is working out. And I was like, really? I thought everything was going so well. She's like, no, this isn't working out. So I immediately start crying. And she's like, well, you can stay for the rest of the day. And I'm like, great. I can teach 4-year-olds the rest of the day while I'm crying. So I get back into my classroom, and most of the kids don't know what's going on. They see an adult upset and it doesn't even like register. But like my favorite kid, my obviously like the most artistic one, the one that I related to the most, he picked up on it right away. And right away he puts on his coat and stands by the door, and he was like, if Miss Wayne's leaving, I'm leaving. And then I'm just like crying, I can't even stop. And I'm like, look, I'm never gonna forget you. I start giving this speech to the class about how like, you're gonna live in my hearts forever. And they're just like, what? We don't care. And then, but I have all these toys that I brought in, and I'm like, all right, you guys just take the toys. You can just have whatever you want. And they're like stuffing their pockets, they're flipping out, and this one kid starts crying, and I'm like, don't worry, Jalen, I'll always remember you. And he's like, Lyric stole my whale. And I'm like, oh, it's not even about me. You're just crying about your toy as usual. So, they start ripping the place apart, and I remember that when I was a kid, I went to visit my cousin who was going to school for carpentry, and one of the things that they did was they built these like fake houses, and they also tore them down. So depending on what semester you started, you either tore the house down and rebuilt it, or you built the house and tore it back down. And I asked my mom why that was, and she was like, well, you learn just as much from tearing something apart as you do from building it. And that always stuck with me. So sitting in the classroom that day, chaos, just trash. At one point someone was like, are we trashing the room? And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And they just ripped shutters off of the dollhouse. Operation Dollhouse was over. They're ripping the roof off, they're tearing the shingles off, and I was like, do it. This is an adult getting fired. This is life. This is what I have to bring to the table. I thought that I was going to be all like perfect and teacher of the year, but this is what we're going to learn. But my favorite memory from teaching at this school, Catholic school, was the Obama inauguration, where for weeks ahead of time they were like, you got to drill it into their head. This is the most important thing. First black president. They have to remember his name, remember the name of his wife and his kids. And I don't really want to do that. It sounded really like patronizing, like just let them learn it on their own, you know? And the day of the inauguration, they had the gym set up with this huge screen and all these chairs, and everyone sitting there, and everyone got to wear their dress clothes that day. And there's that CNN feed where you're seeing like Clinton come out and, you know, George Bush come out and everything, and everyone's just milling around. The kids are getting all rammy, and the head priest goes up to the front of the stage while this is going on, and he's like, okay, well, I'm going to give a little prayer for Obama before he's sworn in, and I just want everybody to pray with me, you know, and give him good luck and stuff, or whatever the religious term for that was. But so we're watching this, and he's saying this whole long prayer, and he's got this robe on and everything, and for just a like split second, the screen, someone who was holding the camera at CNN just like shot it down a hallway where just for a second you could see Malia and Sasha Obama wearing their beautiful colored coats walking down the hallway, and the kids lost it. Like every kid just started screaming and ran up to the screen, and the head priest was like, okay, well, we'll just take care of this later. All right. So like, you can't compete with that. And the awesome thing about that was that chaos and emotion prevailed over this like organized thing that's not what 4-year-olds look for. What a 4-year-old wants is a kid that looks just like him being treated with respect and importance. So thank you.